Hi everybody, I'm Birdsnake, and in this video on guitar theory, we're going to discuss half steps and whole steps. So the most basic way to understand this is that a half step or a whole step is the distance between two notes. So on guitar, if you have one note and you just move up one note higher, then you moved up a half step. Let's go back to that C note. If you move two notes higher, then you moved a whole step. Same applies the other way. If you have a C and you move your finger down one fret, you went down a half step. If you have a C and you move your finger down two notes, you went down a whole step. So a half step is the distance of one note higher or lower, and a whole step is the distance of two notes higher or lower. Now, another word you might see for half step or whole step is tone and semitone. A tone is a whole step, or the space of two notes, and a semitone is a half step, or the space of one note. It seems like a really basic concept, but every piece of music you've heard in your entire life is made up of half steps and whole steps, and they determine how everything sounds in music. So I think the best thing now is for me to demonstrate how half steps and whole steps determine the sound of a scale in G. We're going to do two different scales in G. We're going to do G major first, and then we're going to do G minor. So G major, the scale formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So G, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So G minor is whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So those are scale formulas, and by knowing, let's say, the major scale formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you could start on any note and play a major scale. So let's just pick a random note. We'll do this C right here. If we want to play the C major scale right here, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. There it is. If we want to play the C minor scale, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole step. So that's how whole steps and half steps, or tones and semitones, make up all the scales in music. So I'm going to give you two more examples that, for me personally, I just found them interesting when I was starting out. So first, the whole tone or augmented scale is literally just whole steps until it repeats. Or you can play that like this. And then I wanted to talk about the 4-note diminished scale because it uses 1.5 steps. So instead of whole or half, it goes 1.5 steps. When we get to the lessons on intervals in the future, you'll find out that's a minor third. But for now, just think about this as one whole step plus one half step. Now the diminished scale does that step and a half, step and a half, step and a half over and over. It's like the sound of a villain. And that whole tone scale that we did before, it's like you got sucked into a time warp. I always thought that the augmented scale sounds like you got sucked into a time warp, and the diminished scale, I always thought it sounded like villain stuff. So that's just how I remembered the sound of them when I was learning this stuff. There's also an easy scale pattern for the diminished. Basically, you play the step and a half, then you move your hand over a string and up a fret, then over a string and up a fret, then over a string and up a fret, until you get to the B string, and then it's over a string and up 2 frets. But now it's just over a string and up a fret again. I'll put a scale chart up here. That's the diminished scale. I only brought it up in this lesson because it has symmetry, meaning that the amount of space between each note is the same, and that's the reason I brought up the whole tone scale as well. because the amount of space between each note is the same. Those are the two easiest scale formulas to remember. One last thing I'd like to say about whole steps and half steps is they don't always happen on one string. So one example is, let's just take the C note. One whole step up is a D note. Well, there's also a D note here. So you can go C, D, that's a whole step, or you can go C, D, and that's a whole step. Half step, same thing, but it's more of a stretch. C, C sharp, C, C sharp. So you've probably already realized on guitar you can play the same pattern in notes in more than one way. So you could go whole step, half step right there, or you could go whole step, half step right there. I really only wanted to take a second to mention that they don't just go up and down the neck, they also go across the strings. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you don't already, and I'll put a link to my website, birdsnakebrown.com, in the description where you can go to find all of my lessons. And in the next lesson, we're going to go deeper into melody and harmony. I'm Birdsnake. Thanks for watching.